Imagine being born into such wealth that you believe you will always be the privileged son, even after spoiling your nation's economy and your family's millennium-old traditions. This applied to Prince Andrew, but when he received the news, everything fell apart. Was there any news? What was Andrew's reaction? And who was the one who broke the dreadful news to them? See what happens at the end of this video. Prince Andrew was born into a life that was meant to shield him from repercussions. He was given a position and a public persona that transformed errors into incidental details and excess into expected behavior. That arrangement was successful for decades. A man was not merely adorned by the access, the parades, or the outfits. He was granted permission by them. A thread then came loose. The thread turned into a rope. Everything came loose with the rope. The interview is the first picture that most people think about. Not the details, not the well-practiced denials, but the tone. In front of millions of people, he attempted to explain how monsters are seen. He made a bizarre list of reasons. The incapacity to perspire, the strange assertions of memory loss, the Pizza Express line. The interview did not land the punch. It revealed a man who had never been taught to think for himself. It gave a weapon to the audience, and they took it. The response was brutal and swift. All at once, the carefully constructed image of a military hero and obedient son was replaced by ridicule and incredulity. The incident gave the controversy a concrete quality that the accusations never did. Instead of a gradual decline, there was an abrupt institutional separation that followed. The right to represent the crown vanished, patronages were taken away, and titles were taken away. The monarchs took action without holding a public trial. In administrative finality rather than with dramatic declarations, the advantages that had earlier characterized his identity were revoked. He was no longer able to sign his name with the same force. A silent recall of the office that bestowed that attention meant that he could not enter a room and expect a salute. The palace decision was rendered without the courtroom drama. The additional proof continued coming in after he stated it couldn't be genuine, which only makes the story worse for him. According to an email that came to light in 2011, he told Jeffrey Epstein that they were in this together after a picture connected to the controversy was released. The words implied more than just allegiance. It implied mutual defense and complicity. The public line, with which he claimed to have broken off relations, is conveniently located next to that said private line. The apology he was never able to make is undermined by the private correspondence. When the mirror came for him, it revealed a guy who was comfortable with monsters and liars and was not prepared to face the repercussions. After applauding, the people changed its mind and began to denounce. Polls today depict a nation that wishes to eliminate the last traces of its dominance. Most respondents, spanning all age groups, provided a straightforward moral ledger in response. He is not the person they want to represent them. They do not want the organization that previously raised him to see him. Not a detail, that. The image of monarchy and the accusations and practice of secrecy cannot be reconciled by a society's collective judgment. The figures are simple. They distill millennia of civility into a single act of defiance. In private, the rumors spread in ways that are detrimental to him. Former employees talk about a man who thinks the theater will do whatever he wants. There are 72 teddy bears arranged in a certain order in the story that has come to dominate public consciousness. They were arranged by a maid who had training. His rage may be immense if they weren't positioned exactly. Small acts of cruelty like this do more than just fuel rumors. They show personality. The petty tyrannies he carried into adulthood are exposed by their inability to accept responsibility. They display the appearance of authority while no one is looking. Vanity Fair and other interviewers who spoke with royal employees thought the story was instructive rather than trivial. It matched a broader pattern. It is this pattern that transforms controversy into a story about moral failing. One email, one interview, one settlement, and one claim can all be easily cited. However, patterns don't live a whim. Patterns live in accumulation, where minor humiliations compound to form a behavioral structure. He stopped bragging about his perks and started using them. He fostered connections via desperation and secrecy. He was unable to see the basic human cost of those who were lured into his circle. The plot was not reset with every new discovery. It gave it more weight. After that, there were efforts to restore status. These weren't sincere excuses. They seemed like demands. Requests to re-enter rituals and lifestyles that he felt were rightfully his. The answer, according to those who have researched the family and its role within it, is no. One biographer stated it rather plainly. The royal apparatus will not give him a job back. He is now someone the institution must contain rather than highlight because of his private life, minor habits, and enduring patterns of entitlement. All that remains of his world is a garden and a lodge. He watches TV and plays golf while a nation discusses stripping titles. It is an unrecoverable life whose core was taken away. The audience must exit part 1 here. Instead of a cliffhanger that makes him weaker, it presents a picture of a man whose armor has been taken away and whose first instinct is to strike out. He cannot represent the monarchy, the palace has decided. The public has changed its attitude. Private letters continue to come to light, demonstrating the disconnect between his statements and his actions. He looks as though he has been informed the one thing he finds unacceptable. He looks as though he still thinks he can negotiate with a non-listening world. The question that keeps viewers interested and the plot moving is where we end. After a life based on privilege and authorization is taken away, what is left of the man who believed he was untouchable? The charge will be easier to answer than the solution. The gradual deterioration of reputation, the unrelenting flow of facts, and the silent choices made within the palace will decide whether or not any hope of redemption remains. Behind palace walls, before we can determine if he believes he is untouchable or not, we must first better comprehend his conceit. You are mistaken if you believe that children's tyrannies behind closed doors are unimportant. Because there is a pattern, a personality that has been revealed, behind the public scandals and headlines. An individual who thought that everything in his environment was there for his convenience. He views them essentially as servants to be controlled. According to The Rise and Fall of the House of York, one royal biographer put him like that. Like a pampered child demanding his toys back, staff claim he called his protection officer only to retrieve his golf balls. A tissue would fall to the ground. It will be retrieved by someone who is 4 levels below. Another person pulled the drapes open. Also, someone. Everything. With entitlement, what is dignity? He was not merely demanding accuracy. He called for ridiculousness. A mole on one man's face led to his dismissal. A nylon tie was fired over by another. When employees violated the unseen rules, they were demoted. He acted as though the world was his backdrop, predestined for perfection, not for major transgressions, annoyances, or small flaws. There are rumors that he would label someone a dumb idiot for something as ridiculous as not correctly referring to the Queen Mother. The insult was delivered like a cheesy joke. This was genuine, incisive, and well known enough to be documented in writing, not behind the scenes. No, these are not oddities. They are ruthless, imposing, ubiquitous, repetitious, and prone to irascibility. Employees fear that a simple sneeze, a mispronounced title, a lost tie, or a mole could cost them their job or their peace of mind. These tales are quite heavy. They expose his petty and vengeful nature when no one is looking. Additionally, the general public formerly viewed him as a member of the royal family and the son of the Queen. Royal is not seen by them. They notice arrogance. Despite having golden privilege, they witness an adult guy still having tantrums about plush animals. The teddy bear collection went popular because to its grotesqueness rather than its cuteness. Bears were arranged using cards that were laminated, photographed, then organized in dozens. He is ridiculed on social media. A selfless man with 50 or 60 teddy bears. This is what people are saying on the internet. Andrew truly is a wanker. A shock to employees. No more than a conceited brat. Manchild, conceited ass, defenseless without his titles, and, depending on your point of view, the worst or best, the jeers, the ridicule. As if they were holy treasures, teddy bears lined up with a picture to demonstrate their proper appearance. He would rather criticize your flaw than admit his own fault. These testimonies are more than simply rumors. Employees who sobbed as they left. Protection guards are dragged into pointless activities. Royal blood servants who receive nothing but disdain in return. What is it that he does? He is not reflective. He is not sorry. He secretly licks his wounds, vents his anger in private, and waits for healing even while his world shuts in around him. As if privilege were his armor rather than his jail, he clings to it. Because power is a narcotic, and for certain people, it never goes away, even after the rules are changed. He continues to rent a suite that was once in Buckingham. Expectations and benefits. He won't belittle. He is unwilling to back off. He maintains that despite the monarch, the palace, and the general public having turned the key in the lock, the palace nevertheless yields to him. There are also financial setbacks. He almost loses his allowance, and the security is taken away. He was pressured by the king to reduce his size. These have symbolic value in addition to being cost-effective. You are not who you believed yourself to be, they are saying. This is caught in a single detail. He retained the royal lodge. He continues to struggle for both physical and symbolic space. He wants his address, his presence, and the past. Even when he's lost it, to cherish him. Because losing power is worse than believing you can regain it in the short term. Pride demands that delusion, but the truth is that it is a bandage. This section demonstrates that, despite his belief that the issue was over, it was really just the beginning of a character, brutality, and infantile outbursts disguised as royal requirements. And every little outburst, degrading demand, and firing because of a mole is not insignificant. A wall is being erected between him and any chance of salvation, brick by brick. Thus, we are left with this question after this conduct. What type of man would still choose brutality and vanity over kindness, decency, and humility when the stakes are high? What happens if everyone around you begins to perceive your privilege as entitlement, public collapse, and royal abandonment because you have formed your identity on it? As soon as the public realized he was a joke, the entitlement slipped away, and the ramifications from that interview began. Like a volcano that had been boiling beneath the monarchy's surface, it exploded, finally revealing its lid. Furthermore, the heat was intolerable when it blew. Legal warnings were issued almost instantly. Paul Tweed, a defamation attorney, begged Andrew's then chief of staff in the days leading up to the Newsnight interview. He cautioned that the interview was a recipe for disaster. They paid him no attention. The call was cut off. Andrew continued to move forward, believing that damage could be avoided. It wasn't. The verdict from the media was immediate. Car collision. The level of nuclear explosion is bad. Worst publicity disaster the monarchy has experienced since Diana. In the newspaper, it is what was written, not hyperbole. The entire globe flinched. Andrew looked amazing, shameless and unaffected by suffering. The public organizations, regiments, charities, and institutions that had previously welcomed his presence gradually withdrew it as the weeks went by. One by one, he lost his honorary military positions. Patronage ceased. Once an uncontested birthright, the style His Royal Highness was later humbled, subdued, and taken out of official usage. It was no longer His Royal Highness Prince Andrew, Duke of York. The public turned as he was being dismantled. Oh, the public. A sharp, acrid shift was seen in poll after poll. 67% of Britons, according to a study, think Andrew should forfeit all of his remaining titles. He was still seen favorably by only 5% of people. Instead of witnessing a moment of uncertainty, the pollsters witnessed a decision. Then there was local opposition. The people of York, where he is referred to as Duke, demanded that he be deprived of his title. Over 70% of respondents replied yes. Public honors such as the freedom of the city were taken away. Schools thought about adopting new names. Events omitted his name. His title had become toxic in places that had once been glad to mention him. At the same time, the tension was evident in the semi-private royal hallways. The biography in The Rise and Fall of the House of York portrayed him as petty, harsh, and narcissistic in addition to being flawed. Stories of people getting upset over a staff member's mole, firing someone for wearing a nylon tie, calling in security guards to get his golf balls, and ordering maids from 4 levels below to open drapes were all common. These tales were ingrained in his personality. A courtroom could never have caused the harm they did. Losing face was just as important as losing power. Andrew's actions were deemed unacceptable by the monarchy, which is usually cautious with appearances. Andrew was treated less like a brother or son and more like damage control by King Charles and his top advisors. The palace backed off. It became uncommon or symbolic for him to attend formal family gatherings. Simple things like being invited to funerals or Easter were balanced against the possibility that his name or presence might make headlines. Financial strands were also severed. The official financing, protection, and allowances that provided him with covert and private backing started to dwindle. He was still leased the royal lodge where he resided, but without the status and benefits that came with it, it became difficult to maintain. According to reports, King Charles discontinued Andrew's financial assistance in a number of ways. The top message was unmistakable. Everything that formerly made you a global celebrity is being taken away, yet you are free to remain. Not all members of the royal family are silent anymore. According to sources, the loss of titles, position, uniforms, and the capacity to be someone has caused Andrew great pain. According to biographer Loney, the fact that Andrew's identity insignia have been stolen is more upsetting to him than the interview. He cannot lead a forceful parade. He is unable to wear what he was made to wear. Someone who is more ensnared in entitlement than ever before is shown by their longing for what has been taken, unable to recognize that what has been lost is irretrievably lost. Others inside and outside the palace now insist there is no way back, despite some speculating that his return would be feasible. Leading voices contend that it may be necessary to remove his remaining titles, even if it is merely symbolic. There's too much risk of leaving him half royal. It brings to mind scandal, treachery, and unfulfilled promises. The organization worries that his continued presence will permanently damage the reputation of the brand. Now that he has been expelled from the monarchy, let me tell you about the person who made the announcement. It all began when the palace issued its last statement. It was already ended. Instead of shouting its killings, the monarchy murmurs them. As a private individual, Prince Andrew will fight this case and will no longer perform any public tasks. It was brief, definitive, and clinical. The words served as a funeral as well as an update. His regal life had ended, but he was still alive. The silence within Royal Lodge, the enormous Windsor estate he clung to, grew intolerable. The guests had ceased, the staff had been let go, and the phone, which had previously been humming with courtiers and event planners, hardly rung. When it did, reminders were sent out instead of invites. The royal purse was coming to an end. King Charles had promised that whatever financial dependence that remained would only last for a short time. The monarchy was unable to continue supporting the hated public figure. He started to understand what it meant to be untitled, at least in spirit, for the first time. He had fewer guards and less freedom to move. Even his daughters ended up becoming political conundrums. Can he come? Could he lead them down the aisle without letting shame overshadow them? The answers were unpleasant, quiet, and nearly always provided. No. Every effort at atonement just made the stain deeper. Public outrage was immediate in early 2022 when he was spotted going to Prince Philip's memorial with the Queen. The headlines in the newspapers read, "He's back and Britain isn't having it." Outside St. George's Chapel, people were whispering in contempt and wondering why the exiled man was walking next to the Queen. It was a time to represent the unity of the family. Rather, it served as a reminder of what the monarchy wished to forget. Senior advisors within the palace walls were incensed. Months of damage control were reversed by that one appearance and that moment. Despite her empathy for the Queen's mother impulse, Portia was aware of the bad optics. It had been the last time the Queen had openly supported him. Then she passed away softly, and whatever protection was left fell apart as she did. To keep the monarchy's reputation from deteriorating within, King Charles had waited decades to modernize it. He made a decisive initial move. The public would never see Andrew again. As long as he didn't stand on the balcony, he could go to family gatherings. Although he lives on royal property, he does not represent the throne. He might identify as duke, but the country would not consider him to be one. He was completely excluded when the coronation took place. No salute, no uniform, and no look at the throne were present. He came like a relic from a bygone era, escorted by security instead of pomp. The crowd's response was chilly, and cameras captured him appearing uneasy when his medals were taken off display. No jeering, only silence, the type that pierces more deeply than sound. He was frozen out not only by the public. Once enthusiastic charities that wanted royal support turned him down. Colleges removed him from their honor roll. To disassociate themselves from his name, the Commonwealth societies that had used it changed their names. Once an organization dedicated to youth leadership under his patronage, the Duke of York's award changed its structure to eliminate any traces of him. In his own legacy, he turned into an asterisk and a warning. The cries of petitions became louder even in York. Parliament was encouraged by the public to formally deprive him of the Duke of York title. In public, even local MPs expressed their displeasure with the title. What had once been a mark of pride has turned into a radioactive name. The man who had once stood for the city now represented everything it wished to disassociate itself from. Privately, Andrew's image and financial situation both fell apart. Legal settlements cost millions of dollars. It was reported that in order to avoid a public trial, the Queen personally paid a portion of the settlement. The harm was irreparable, nevertheless, even with that defense. The people viewed it as not innocent but as silence bought with money. In every subsequent shot, he appeared smaller, paler, and more reduced. Once walking arrogantly over palace lawns, the man now shunned cameras completely. He was described by previous employees as a grumpy, lonely man who paced the hallways like a phantom. They called off the extravagant birthday parties. Invitations ceased to arrive. His environment was supposedly getting smaller, detail by detail, privilege by privilege, as even the home pets were allegedly cared for by outsiders. He still thought there was a way out, though. In the belief that anger would subside with time, he continued to harbor aspirations of returning to public service. To test the waters, advisors made references to private philanthropy, quiet charitable work, and anything else. Every attempt, however, was unsuccessful. Every press release stoked rage again. New headlines characterized him as insane with each hint of rehabilitation. Years later, when the BBC's The Newsnight interview film dramatized the moment that ruined his career, he was incensed once more. Not due to artistic license, but rather because it made everyone relive the humiliation. He was trapped in a mirror that the actor playing him created. According to critics, it was the most realistic portrayal of conceit on TV. There was nowhere else for him to go by now. Epstein was no longer alive. He had lost his entire royal circle. Even his familial friendships were conditioned. The ghosts of prestige, the crests, the portraits, the reminders of a title that hadn't yet been revoked by Parliament, were all around him. Today, royal biographers refer to him as the man who knew nothing. In addition to being a scandal, they refer to his downfall as a revelation, demonstrating how power without humility inevitably consumes itself. And that may be the reality. Not only did Andrew lose his position in the monarchy, he was no longer under the delusion that his privilege would keep him safe. There was ultimately no need for a formal exile. He became an independent one. It wasn't necessary for the public to ruin him. They simply had to give up searching. For someone who once lived to be seen, becoming invisible is a form of punishment in and of itself. And that's who told him the awful news. No human being. It's not a declaration. However, the actual world. Silently. All together. Concluding that it had happened.